I was listening to the Ezra Klein show from the New York Times, and I think something that struck me as a rabbi, as someone who's observed Shabbat his entire life, is something that I didn't pay attention to. And there's someone who doesn't necessarily observe Shabbat every week or doesn't observe it the way I do, noted something that I had never thought about. Ezra Klein pointed out that Shabbat is something that we spend 1/7 of our lives living. If you're an Orthodox Jew, if you're not Orthodox and you observe Shabbat, you're spending 1/7 of your life doing that. Now, for those of you who run an Orthodox household, you know that Shabbat is not just 24 hours. You know that there's the hours beforehand, there's the cleaning, the cooking, the showering, the getting dressed, the getting prepared, the preparing what you're going to learn. Then once Shabbat is over, there's the cleaning up, there's the remembering what happened, there's the putting the house back together, there's the reminiscing, there's the talking, there's a lot that remains. So I would say it's more than a seventh, closer to a sixth of our lives is spent on Shabbat. And it's this incredible concept. It's an island of utopia in this world. We say that Shabbat is me'ein olam haba. It's similar to the world to come, and that's so true because it is living a utopia. There's no phones, there's no computers, there's no driving anywhere, there's nothing. There's just you, your family, God, community, and that's one of the most extraordinary things about Shabbat. I think of all the children that are lucky enough to see parents that are so busy with work all the time, and come Shabbat, the parents make time for them. I think of communities that don't really get to meet, especially in today's digital age. They don't get to meet in person, and Shabbat forces that human to human interaction. I think of the couples, husbands, wives, friends, whoever it may be, who like don't get really to focus on one another, and on Shabbat they get that time, they get that opportunity, and it's an incredible thing that looking back and reflecting on a whole lifetime, you think, wow, like almost a sixth of my life was spent on this utopia. And there's a very famous saying from Echad Ha'am, who was a very secular Zionist thinker, who said more than the Jewish people have preserved the Sabbath has preserved the Jewish people, because the Sabbath has is what allowed us to keep our sanity under insane conditions. So when Jews were downtrodden and beaten and humiliated and discriminated against and tortured and pogroms and everything, nonetheless, no matter what happens, every Jew in his home were kings and queens and princes and princesses for 1 day a week. And it's not just a small day, it's for a sixth of their lives. They were centered around utopia. They had that me'ein olam haba. They had that extraordinary utopia. And one of my favorite ideas from Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, who I had the pleasure and privilege of knowing and attending his classes when he taught at Yeshiva University, is that Shabbat is sort of this, it's a sanctuary in time, but it also is an enforcer of equality, because whether you were the wood chopper or the water carrier or the baker or the rich businessman in the shtetl, whatever it is that you were, on Shabbat, you were equal. You all came with your cleanest clothing. You all showered. You all came to synagogue. You all went home to your families. Of course, there were those who came back to nice houses with lots of food. There were those who came back to small houses and poverty. But the concept of sitting around the table, having a meal, that's an extraordinary concept. I think to myself, even me as a child, we did not have much when I was growing up, but I can tell you that on Shabbat the table was set with the most beautiful dishes. You could have been in the, in the home of some, royalty. Beautiful dishes, beautiful table, delicious food. You were taught to hold your fork in your left hand, your knife in your right hand, a napkin. Just, it was this insane concept of royalty for one day a week. And that's to me the beauty of Shabbat. It's that utopia, it's the equalizer, it's coming together. The rabbis say that the main purpose of Shabbat was actually so that people come to have time to study Torah. You think of all the people who are so busy with work, they don't have time to study Torah. And so one day a week, they're forced to open a book, to familiarize themselves with our traditions, with our sacred texts. And all this is just so much about the beauty of Shabbat, about the beauty of rest. And I'd like to just thank, honestly, Ezra Klein from the New York Times for this revolutionary understanding that Shabbat is a huge chunk of your life. And that's why I encourage people, if you have experienced the beauty of Shabbat, make sure it's consistent, because when it's consistent, you know it's that seventh or sixth of your life. You know that you'll be able to look back on your life and say, wow, this a measurable chunk of this life was lived as it should have. A measurable chunk of this life was lived in utopia. A measurable chunk of this life was spent with family and friends and community and with love and song. And most importantly, I encourage you, if you do observe Shabbat, to make sure that it has that spirit of love, of harmony, of kindness. Look at your family, look at your friends, be kind, and remember that you are creating your own utopia. You are creating your own me'ein olam haba. You are creating your own kind of space, sacred space, space of pleasure and joy and happiness and song and music. And that's for you to make. So make sure you enhance that, you decorate it. Don't look at Shabbat as this thing that just happens every week. Oh my gosh, what happened? Who knew this is coming, right? It's coming. And think long term how you want your Shabbat to look. If you have any questions, thoughts, or comments, please do leave them here. Thank you for listening.